Hey everyone, for this project we decided to present the how-to of grounded theory by way of this video presentation. The content presented is meant to serve as a deep dive into grounded theory. Currently, grounded theory differs from other research approaches in that it serves to explain the phenomenon being studied and the means to achieve specific aims with diverse research designs. Our overall learning objectives of this video presentation are: discuss main purpose of grounded theory, introduce key concepts and methodology, explore data analysis and procedures specific to grounded theory, apply grounded theory to real-world research, and learn the basics of grounded theory documentation. Further, there will be short pauses throughout this video presentation to engage in live discussions and an opportunity to apply grounded theory to our chosen qualitative study relating to the cultural context of non-disclosure of alcohol-involved acquaintance rape among Asian American college women. Lastly, we wanted to thank everyone who contributed to this video presentation, as well as to Dr. Clark and our classmates for their participation today. Although grounded theory is an ever-evolving concept that has the potential to lead us down paths of clarity or even uncertainty, we hope that we are able to showcase the contributions and significant roles it has played throughout the history of qualitative research design.
Grounded theory was considered the brainchild of two American sociologists, Drs. Glaser and Dr. Strauss, who argued that researchers needed a method that would allow them to move from data to theory in order for new theories to emerge. Close to 40 years later, grounded theory has evolved to help generate theories and answer research questions that existing theories do not adequately explain. Progressive identification and integration, the methods piece, offer categories and meaning from data or products, which oftentimes are considered theory. And as such, grounded theory provides us with guidelines on how to identify categories, how to make links between the categories, and how to establish relationships between categories. Grounded theory, as a theory, is the end product of this process. It provides us with an explanatory framework which helps us understand the phenomenon under investigation. It allows us to identify, refine, and integrate categories, and then ultimately to develop theory. And unlike other research methods, grounded theory merges the processes of data collection and analysis, allowing the user or the researcher to move back and forth between the two in an attempt to ground the analysis in data through key strategies, including constant comparative analysis, theoretical sampling, and theoretical coding. Overall, the purpose of grounded theory is to generate a theory that explains how an aspect of our social world works. The goal is to develop a theory that emerges from and is therefore adopted to formulate a hypothesis or a theory based on existing phenomenon, or to discover the participant's main concern and how they will continually try to resolve it.
Before we take a deep dive, it's important for us to review some basic terminology of the various stages of grounded theory. Codes, identifying anchors that allow the key points of the data to be gathered. Concepts, collection of codes of similar content that allows the data to be grouped. Categories, broad groups of similar concepts that are used to generate theory. Theory, a collection of categories that detail the subject of the research. Further, grounded theory researchers need an initial research question to focus their attention upon a particular phenomenon they wish to investigate. The initial research question should serve to identify but not make assumptions about the phenomenon of interest. This is difficult, if not impossible, to achieve, as we cannot ask questions without making assumptions. However, we can attempt to remain at a descriptive level and use our question to simply identify the phenomenon. In grounded theory, the initial research question should be open-ended, not be compatible with simple yes/no answers, identify the phenomenon of interest without making too many assumptions, never employ constructs derived from existing theories, and orients the researcher towards action and process. Ideally, as the research progresses, the researcher is able to focus the research question more narrowly through theoretical sampling and theoretical sensitivity. By the time theoretical saturation has been achieved, the initial research question should have changed almost beyond recognition.
Over time, grounded theory has discovered common methods that have allowed researchers to reach new heights in the research process. These methods include participant observation, which involves the researcher immersing themselves in the daily lives and routines of those being studied or the fieldwork. Interviewing, learning a culture or group by speaking and interviewing its members. These interviews vary in formality, such as formal interviews, semi-structured, and structured. Collection of artifacts and texts, learning about a group or culture by collecting and studying artifacts and materials used by members of the culture in their daily lives. Further, the methods section is aimed to describe exactly what researchers did and why, which includes information about data collection techniques, choice of context and participants, and how data was coded and how categories were integrated, which ultimately showcases the research's progression and a discussion of reflectivity.
In terms of data collection, grounded theory is compatible with a wide range of data collection techniques that have been previously discussed in our class. However, it's important to differentiate between the full implementation version of this method, requiring the researcher to shift between data collection and analysis, and the abbreviated version that involves the coding of data only. In the full version, the researcher collects data, explores the data through initial open coding, establishes tentative links between the categories, and then returns to the field to collect further data. In the full version, the researcher is able to triangulate or draw on different data sources and use different methods of data collection, allowing the researcher to push outwards and seek manifestations of categories and details, offering researchers the confidence that theoretical saturation is being approached. In the abbreviated version, the researcher works with the original data only, meaning that the theoretical sensitivity and saturation, as well as the negative case analysis, can only be implemented within the texts that are being analyzed. Further, the researchers do not have the opportunity to leave the confines of the original data set, the ability to broaden or refine their data analysis, and should only use this version when time or research constraints prevent utilizing the full version.
As grounded theorists, there's a structural process that takes place. In order to achieve optimal outcomes, initially they start with conducting initial coding, which is a quick and spontaneous way to spawn a fresh view of the data, focusing on the actions and the data rather than applying pre-existing categories or theories. Then the process moves to initial memos, an exploratory step that offers advancement in raising codes to tentative categories, direct and focused on further data collection. The transition to a major phase of data collection, which is also focused coding, which uses the most significant and frequent codes to sift through the codes that make the most analytical sense to categorize your data incisively and completely. And lastly, advanced memos, which is the pivotal intermediate step between data collection and writing drafts of paper. This phase in the process constitutes a crucial method in grounded theory, as it prompts you to analyze your data, capture your thoughts, crystallize questions, and focus on the direction you aim to pursue.
In order to grasp the content, we felt that it was best to apply grounded theory to a qualitative study that took place among Asian American college women. With high school enrollment and increasing alcohol use, Asian American college women may be at particular risk for experiencing alcohol-involved acquaintance rape. Although Asian American women have expressed the weakest intentions to report rape compared to other ethnic groups, cultural factors influencing these intentions remain unexamined. Guided by grounded theory, we chose to interview an Asian American college woman about how she felt Asian American college women would respond to an alcohol-involved acquaintance rape. Please note that this scenario represents a brief snapshot of grounded theory and is meant to serve as a learning activity and an opportunity for us to identify and apply the various steps that we have outlined throughout this video presentation.
Thank you so much for being here today. Tell me, as an Asian American woman, how are men and women viewed differently when they're heavily intoxicated?
Well, growing up in this culture, Asian women are expected to be a good girl, be pure, and be virgins until they're married, and you reflect to your family. So if you're a girl and you're drinking, it's viewed as an embarrassment, and you're a total mess, and you're not ladylike and unstructured, and it's not an ideal way to represent yourself or your family. However, for men, it's more of a social status thing, and it's ingrained in the culture that drinking and getting heavily intoxicated is a natural thing for men. It's like a sign of strength.
So, if you would, let's say an average socially drinking Asian American female college student was raped and alcohol was involved. What would the average Asian American woman do in this situation?
I think it would be simple to say that family would be the number one supporter in this kind of situation and she'd lean on them, but in the role of the parents, there's a high chance that she'd feel ashamed to tell her parents because they would judge her for drinking in the first place. And also, talking to Asian parents about rape, just the act of it, would be really difficult. And sex is supposed to be a sacred thing, so most Asian parents that I know expect their daughters to be virgins until they're married. And whether you have sex or are raped, regardless, her parents would lose trust in her and form their own opinions or even disown her, so she'd probably do everything she could to not have anyone find out what happened.
Following this scene, let's quickly circle back to the initial stages of grounded theory. We have provided you with the transcripts generated from the interview and ask that you now take the opportunity to conduct the initial coding and initial memoing in our live discussion.
Consequently, the final stages of grounded theory consist of many pivots that will take place throughout the research journey, often urging you to retrace your steps, generate new questions, set new paths, and ultimately, seeing what you have when you arrive at the first draft of the theory. These stages include theoretical sampling, which involves starting with data, constructing tentative ideas relating to the data, and then examining these ideas through further empirical inquiry. This phase is meant to be strategic, specific, and systematic. Sorting and integrating memos, which offers logic to organizing the analysis and a way to create and refine theoretical links that prompt the opportunity to make comparisons between categories. And lastly, writing the draft, which provides an opportunity to present new discoveries with each revision and making your mark in your field of research. It's important to note that throughout these stages, the process of initial coding and theoretical sampling is ongoing. We end our journey by looking back on the steps that we have taken and by looking forward to assess the impact of their grounded theory, which has been influentially guided by ground theorists. Kathy Sharmaz and Jan Morse. Along the way, they have taught us to gather data, categorize them, memo write, and widen our route by theoretical sampling and specify directions for our grounded theorizing through sorting and integrating our categories. Grounded theory has undoubtedly allowed us to look back into its past, explore its presence, and turn forward to the future. And in the words of Kathy Sharmaz, you are now the expert. The theory is yours. Compose your manuscript.